You were told money rewards effort. You were told the system is fair, and you were told that if you just work hard enough, the future will meet you halfway. Here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. The rules were engineered to keep most people stable enough to stay obedient and broke enough to stay dependent. This is not financial advice. This is financial education, and we are going to talk about the 8 habits people quietly avoid when they know the uncomfortable truth. Modern life is not getting better, it is getting more selective. In 2026, AI is not just replacing jobs, it is replacing the middle layer that used to buffer you from disaster. Housing is not just expensive, it is permanently detached from wages in places like the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Inflation may have eased on paper after the peak, but your purchasing power still has scars. Meanwhile, the stock market keeps grinding higher because it is pricing a future where assets win and wages lose. And if you are still waiting for a safety net, you will learn something brutal about timing and math. I want you to keep one question closed the whole video. What are you doing that makes it harder for you to escape, not easier? First, let's talk about the biggest life decision that people treat like a personal virtue instead of a financial stress test. Having a child can be beautiful. It can also be brutal. And in 2026, the financial reality hits harder than ever because you are competing against a labor market where entry-level work is shrinking, and AI tools can do parts of your job cheaper than you can do it alone. Picture a 32-year-old nurse named David. She works rotating shifts in a hospital where staffing is already thin. She wants to have a second child. She also has student loan payments, rising insurance costs, and a car that keeps breaking down. She hears a friend say the usual line, "Just have the baby. You will figure it out. It will be fine." Then she does the math, the part nobody wants to do. In the first 6 to 12 months, sleep becomes a system you cannot negotiate with. Babies do not care about your career trajectory. They do not care about your rent. If the baby needs feeding every couple of hours at night, you lose not just sleep, but your ability to recover and perform. And performance is what determines whether you get scheduled more, offered overtime, promoted, or kept when budgets tighten. Now imagine she gets offered overtime, and for one night she refuses because she is exhausted. It's not a big deal, she tells herself. But then the schedule changes. Her supervisor decides that a different nurse, the one who never misses a night, is the one who gets the extra hours and the career track. That is how small decisions become destiny in modern workplaces. Not because anyone is evil, because incentives are mechanical. And here is where the truth gets darker. When people say have children early, they pretend the only cost is financial. But the real cost is opportunity cost, stamina cost, and career compounding. The first years of child rearing are exactly the years when your job could be building momentum. In a world where AI accelerates hiring and compresses training time, taking years off can mean your catch-up later plan gets crushed under a faster clock. Society loves the romance of sacrifice. It does not love the spreadsheet version of sacrifice. So yes, you can believe in family, and you can also admit that timing matters. If you have a little financial room, if you have real emergency savings, if your health is stable, if you have support that is not just words, then having a child can be less like jumping off a moving train. But if you do it under pressure, because your friends are doing it, because social media makes you feel behind, because you think it will work out, you are signing up for an outcome that is statistically unforgiving. In 2026, the labor market is already ruthless. Many companies are using AI copilots, automated scheduling, document generation, customer service bots, and screening tools. The jobs that remain are often more demanding, and the people who used to manage them are now augmented by machines. That means your advantage is narrower. If you disappear from work for a year or two, the gap is not just time, it is skill obsolescence. AI does not just replace tasks, it changes what doing the job well means, and they want you to treat this like it is normal. Meanwhile, they tell you your problem is personal weakness, not structure. They knew this shift was coming. They always knew. Second, stop romanticizing your ability to fix everything with cheap dopamine. This is uncomfortable because many people do not want to admit how deeply entertainment trains the brain. But in 2026, the connection between attention, compulsive consumption, and financial outcomes is clearer than ever. You can see it in productivity apps, in gambling apps, in short-form videos, in endless scroll, and yes, in sexual content consumption. Scientists have warned for years that repeated high-stimulation habits can rewire reward systems. The mechanism is simple enough to explain without drama. When your brain gets trained to expect a strong reward quickly, ordinary life rewards start to feel flat. Motivation collapses, focus declines, and you start chasing intensity instead of progress. If you have ever opened a website or a feed and then realized an hour vanished, you already know the feeling. If you have ever told yourself you would stop, only to find yourself returning later, you already know how hard the loop is to break. Now bring that into finances. Money is delayed gratification. A budget is boring. Saving is boring. Working out is boring. Learning a new skill is boring. Investing requires patience. Even building credit requires patience. And compulsive stimulation undermines patience. So here is the blunt takeaway. When you let your brain become addicted to instant rewards, you weaken your ability to endure the boring steps that actually create wealth. In 2026, AI can automate many tasks, but it cannot automate discipline. And the people who win in an AI-driven economy are not the ones with the loudest dreams. They are the ones with the longest attention spans and the strongest ability to say no. If you are serious about escaping financial stress, your first opponent is not inflation, it is your own attention. Pattern break time. Imagine your brain as a browser with too many tabs open. You can keep clicking, you can keep refreshing, but the more tabs you open, the slower everything becomes. Eventually, your computer feels broken, but it is not broken. It is overloaded. Compulsive stimulation overloads the internal browser of your mind, and overload has consequences. It makes you feel tired. It makes you feel emotionally numb. It makes you miss deadlines. It makes you avoid conversations you need to have about money. It makes you spend to escape the emptiness. They will not tell you that a credit card is sometimes just a sedative with interest, and they will definitely not tell you that a dopamine habit can sabotage your career just as effectively as a bad boss. Third, the trap that keeps you poor is not just spending. It is the psychology of escalating spending after you already committed. Remember the old story about the birdcage. A professor gives a friend a fancy birdcage, and suddenly everyone starts asking where the bird is. The friend does not want the bird. But social pressure and personal discomfort turn into a purchase. Once you buy the cage, you are psychologically nudged to buy the matching bird. Then you need the right food, the right setup, the right decorations, the right filter, the right replacements. This is not just a cute metaphor, it is a buying machine. Here is how it works in real life. You buy a belt for appearance. Then you realize your pants look cheap. So you buy pants. Then shoes. Then you start buying little upgrades that keep your identity intact. You are not buying because you need it. You are buying because you already started the story, and quitting the story feels like failure. Then you make it worse with financing. You take a payment plan, you tell yourself it is manageable. A few thousand per month does not feel like a crisis, but the crisis is time. Financing spreads the pain across years, which means you keep paying even when the original reason for the purchase is gone. Now tie this to 2026. In a world where interest rates are still high enough to matter for most normal people, debt is more expensive than it used to be. Even if the Fed has moved rates down from the peak, the average consumer often does not benefit the way the headlines suggest. The cost of borrowing stays in your life through credit cards, auto loans, student loans, and mortgages you cannot refinance easily if you bought late or your credit is weak. And inflation, even when it cools, has already changed your baseline. Food and insurance and childcare and healthcare costs tend to stick at higher levels, so your budget room is thinner than it was in the optimistic years you are remembering. So when you slip into birdcage spending, you are not just spending, you are financing a lifestyle that is increasingly incompatible with your real income. Micro story. A guy named Marcus in California makes around $40,000 a year. His job is stable, but not generous. He buys a $10 coffee sometimes. He tells himself it is small. Then he buys a subscription because he wants to stay productive. He buys a better phone because his old one is slow. Then he buys a new pair of headphones because he thinks he deserves comfort. Then he buys fitness gear because he starts a plan. None of these purchases are dramatic alone, but together they build a monthly obligation pattern. And then, when an emergency hits, Marcus does not have a cash buffer. He has only a credit limit, so he borrows. Then he pays interest. Then the emergency becomes debt. Then debt becomes a lifestyle. Then he works extra hours, and the extra hours do not build wealth. They just pay the interest that the birdcage psychology created. The system does not need you to be stupid. It only needs you to be consistent. And you are consistent. You just do it for the wrong reason. Now here is the next uncomfortable truth. The people who profit from this system are not just random merchants. They are institutions with teams of behavioral psychologists and profit targets. Larry Fink of BlackRock has talked about the long-term shift toward asset management dominance, and you can feel it in how the financial ecosystem is designed to funnel money into products that are profitable for the providers, not necessarily beneficial for you. Banks and platforms make money when you borrow. Credit card companies make money when you carry balances. Retailers make money when you finance. Even passive income creators make money when you watch, click, and stay anxious enough to purchase their next course. So if you want a real upgrade in 2026, you need a new skill: consumption deferral, not never spend. That is fantasy. The real skill is reducing the frequency and the escalation. Ask before you buy, not, is this nice, but what future does this steal from me? In the real world, one latte might be trivial, one impulse purchase might be manageable, but the pattern matters. Repetition is the engine of financial decline. Fourth, you have to fight hoarding, because hoarding is another kind of financial disease. The squirrel syndrome story is old, but it is modern now. Some people hoard because they fear scarcity. They keep supplies, gadgets, backups, and random files. They tell themselves they are prepared. But preparedness becomes accumulation without purpose. In 2026, hoarding looks like clutter and also looks like digital storage. People save hundreds of photos they never review. They keep bookmarks to articles they never read. They download productivity apps and never use them. They keep subscription-based services because canceling feels like giving up control. This also shows up in physical shopping. It shows up in maybe I will use it someday purchases. And it shows up in the most expensive form, carrying financial clutter in the form of debt and unstructured expenses. Because debt is also hoarding. You collect obligations, you collect interest charges, you collect late fees, you collect stress. Then you tell yourself you are saving for security, while you are actually building anxiety. Now you might ask, isn't that too harsh? It is not harsh, it is accurate. If your life is surrounded by things you do not use, and bills you do not understand, you have converted your future into a storage unit. In 2026, storage is not cheap. Storage costs are your rent, your insurance, your opportunity loss, and your mental energy. And mental energy is the currency you spend to make decisions. So how do you fight it? You practice releasing. You purge not only objects, but habits. You cancel subscriptions you never use. You stop saving data you never consult. You stop keeping accounts that drain attention. And you stop buying things to soothe anxiety. Pattern interrupt again. Think about the difference between having a plan and having a pile. A pile feels safe. A plan creates leverage. A pile is passive. A plan makes you active. If you want to be resilient in a world where AI can change employment faster than you can retrain, you need a plan, not a pile. A plan is cash flow clarity. It is emergency savings. It is insurance coverage you do not ignore. It is a debt strategy. It is a skill pathway that matches where jobs are shifting, and skills in 2026 are shifting. AI is eating routine tasks in customer support, basic content production, junior analytics, some coding, and even first drafts of marketing materials. Many roles are still needed, but they are changing. The middle is shrinking. That means the people who do best are not always the most talented. They are often the most adaptable. Fifth, stop treating the future like it will save you automatically. In the old story, retirement was a promise. In the modern story, retirement is an accounting problem. In the United States, Social Security faces long-term funding stress due to demographic aging. In many countries, pension systems are underfunded. People are being told to work longer, and they resent it, and rightly so. But resentment does not pay bills. The real truth is that the same society that lectures you about delayed gratification is also delaying your relief. Insurance markets are reacting to climate-driven losses. Housing costs keep rising in many regions. Migration costs are rising as regions deal with disasters. In some places, insurance availability collapses, and homeowners are left exposed. That is not an abstract climate event. That is a financial destabilization of property values, monthly payments, and household balance sheets. Meanwhile, global debt has crossed the scale of hundreds of trillions of dollars worldwide. That kind of debt does not disappear. It gets serviced until the servicing becomes a threat. Then governments and central banks respond with policies that impact interest rates, lending, and inflation dynamics. Jerome Powell can talk calmly from a podium, but the outcome shows up in your paycheck and your mortgage statement and your credit card terms. So what do you do with this reality? You do the boring things that protect you from a rigged timeline. You build a cash buffer. You reduce high-cost debt. You avoid turning small pleasures into long-term obligations. You treat your attention as a resource. You treat your identity as something that can be improved without purchases. And yes, you also take control of your decision-making process, because the system wants you reactive. If you need a practical framework, use writing. Not because writing is magic, writing is structure. Your brain lies to you in real time. When you feel stressed, your brain tells you to buy comfort now. When you feel behind, your brain tells you to chase hype now. When you feel lonely, your brain tells you to fill the gap with stimulation now. Writing interrupts those impulses. It forces you to see your thinking clearly. Micro story. A man named Kevin starts journaling every night for 10 minutes. At first, he writes about work stress. Then one day he realizes he always spends money right after he writes. He is not calm. He is negotiating with anxiety using the language of logic. So he changes the ritual. He writes before he opens his banking app. He writes after. He compares. He begins to notice patterns. A month later, he stops a few subscriptions and pays down credit card balances. Not because he discovered a secret, because he stopped being blind. Writing trains your mind to notice, and noticing is power. If you want an even more ruthless tactic, create a future letter to yourself. Not a motivational letter, a decision letter. Tell yourself what you will refuse to do when you feel desperate. Tell yourself what the numbers look like when you are calm. Then when your mood tries to hijack your wallet, you read it like evidence in a case. Because in 2026, evidence beats emotion. Now we need to connect all of this to the world you live in right now. AI is accelerating inequality because it increases productivity for those who own capital and increases displacement for those who rely on routine wages. If you work in a job that can be partially automated, your bargaining power becomes weaker. If you are already behind financially, a career interruption can be catastrophic. That is why your personal habits around discipline, spending, and attention matter so much. They are the difference between a rough year and a permanent slide. Interest rates are not just numbers on screens. They shape your mortgage payments, your borrowing costs, and your investment opportunity set. Even when rate cuts happen, the earlier years of high rates might have already damaged your plans. Your credit score might still be recovering. Your debt might still be expensive. Your